Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COMDEX. My name is Jason Chudnovsky. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of the Interface Group. Before we get started this morning, I'd like to make a brief announcement. Yesterday, the Interface Group announced, in cooperation with the Microsoft Corporation, that we will stage a new trade show, the Windows World Exposition and Conference, next May 20th to the 23rd at the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta. Window World will run concurrently with COMDEX Spring 91. Immediately following the keynote, we invite the members of the press to remain with us for an informal briefing on Windows World 91. Representatives from both Microsoft and the Interface Group will be available to answer any questions. Despite his many accomplishments, our keynote speaker is still a young man. He started his career in software while still in high school in Seattle, working with Paul Allen as a consultant in the mainframe mini-computer programming field. In 1974, as an undergraduate at Harvard, he continued working with Allen, developing a basic programming language for the first commercially available microcomputer. After the successful completion of that program, the two formed Microsoft to develop and market software for the emerging microcomputer industry. The rest is history, to a great extent the history of the computer industry. Microsoft has set standards for software and languages, operating systems, and applications. Today, our keynoter continues to provide vision on new products and technology for his company. He is also actively involved in significant operating and strategic decisions and plays an important role in the technical development and management. As chairman, he works along with Microsoft President Mike Hallman to manage the company's business. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the chairman, CEO, and co-founder of Microsoft, our keynoter, Bill Gates.
It was 7 years ago, in 1983, when I last keynoted COMDEX. At that time, I kicked off Microsoft's crusade for the graphical user interface. Well, a lot has changed in these 7 years. Not only has that crusade come to fruition, but now we're in an industry that's far more professional and far larger. One dramatic illustration of this change is the way I've gone about preparing my second keynote speech. In 1983, I spent an hour writing the speech, and I showed up about 10 minutes before start time. I plugged in the slide projector myself, and since I couldn't find anyone to change the slides, I asked my father, who'd come down to see the speech, if he'd do that for me. Well, this year, we're a little more elaborate. It's a real honor to keynote the first COMDEX of the 1990s. The PC industry is faced this year with a major question of whether it will continue to be the very innovative, high-growth industry that it was throughout the 1980s. In order to achieve this, I think that our industry has to have a common vision. And so today, I would like to share with you my view of what that vision should be. First, let's look back on what the key milestones were in the 1980s. It was all kicked off in 1981 with the first DOS machine from IBM. That machine became an important standard, allowing software developers to write and test their applications one time, and allowing customers for the first time to mix hardware of various types and run different applications very, very easily. 1982 was the kickoff for PC networking. And although it's still not prevalent on a high percentage of the machines, there have been great strides since that time. 1984 was an important year for the graphical interface. Apple's Macintosh became the first high-volume standard with graphic interface built into the machine. And in 1986, we had the kickoff of a generation of 32-bit personal computers using the 386 microprocessors. Well, this year, we also find a number of exciting things going on that will move our industry forward. First, let's look at some of the hardware that's available to us today. For the first time, the 386 has moved into the mainstream. Businesses are placing the majority of their new orders for VGA 386 computers. In fact, we've seen a self-reinforcing phenomenon where the more popular these machines are, the more popular graphical interface is, and therefore the more popular those machines are. It's to the point where all the innovative new software I'm aware of is being written assuming these hardware capabilities. We're also very excited about the moves that Apple took in the last few months to make the Apple Macintosh more affordable. This guarantees that the Apple platform will be an even higher platform and therefore attract even more software development. We're also seeing fantastic strides in portable computers. In fact, we can say that we now have portables without compromise. Portables with the full graphics capability, the full performance, even very, very large hard disks. And for the first time this year, I think we'll see lots of fascinating color portable machines. We're also seeing on the desktop, the range of graphics options has expanded dramatically. I think it's important to have full-page displays. And for people who want to work with art, we need a color capability called 24-bit color that lets them deal with real-life images. Well, these options are now available. And because of the new standards we have, people can introduce these displays without asking the applications developers to change their software. Finally, and I think most important, are the advances being made in the microprocessor itself. Intel's 386 and 486 and the generations beyond that promise two very, very important things. The first is that we'll have complete upwards compatibility with the majority of machines that run today's DOS software. The second is that we'll have so much performance available that it's even interesting to think what the software industry is going to do with machines that will deliver over 100 million instructions per second running on the desktop. Well, hardware is not the only area where we see exciting things this year. We also see that in the area of tools, there have been huge advances. Some people say that tools are the most important thing because the pace with which new developments take place really depend on these software tools. Particularly if we think of companies building their own mission-critical applications that can help move the PC into the center of how they do business. First, we're seeing end-user programming language, hypercard-type products that make it easy to build information stacks without really learning the full complexity of program development. We're also seeing a new class of languages, so-called object-oriented languages, such as the extension to C called C++ or Actor and Smalltalk. Now, these languages enable us to share our development work in a much more general way than we could in the past using the object-oriented techniques. We're also seeing graphical design tools. Now, these tools eliminate completely the need to write code for the user interface. In fact, you can prototype up a user interface in just a few hours, show it to the user who will be working with it, and that user can ask for change, and you can iterate that prototype literally one version per day. So that entire area has improved in quality while requiring far, far less work. Finally, for the large projects that are moving down off the mainframe onto PC networks, we have a set of case tools that allow for group development. These case tools integrate together all the work going on in the project, including the design effort, along with the coding and the testing itself, and promise to deliver incredible productivity benefits. In the area of applications, we're also seeing not only great applications, but applications that I think give us a glimpse of this new direction that we need to head in. First is an application called Unite from Cirrus Technology. This is an application that can take all the different types of information you have in the office and bring them together into a database and make it easy to find that information. We also see exciting products like News Edge from Desktop Data. This product runs on a server, and it gathers all the news stories coming in from a variety of sources, and it analyzes those stories, picking the ones that would be of interest to particular users. Next, we see Lotus's Notes product. Now, this is really an information sharing product, allowing groups to set up notes databases to see what's going on and share in a way that they could not in the past. We've seen companies like Price Waterhouse, who are applying this on a very widespread basis, receive dramatic productivity benefits from the way that they can work together. A few months ago, Software Publishing introduced its Info Alliance product. Once again, this is a product that uses the network and graphical interface in a very new way, allowing decision to support to be done by bringing together information from a variety of sources and making it very, very easy for people to view that information in the way that they would like. Finally, we have Seros's FileShare product. Now, this product started out being used primarily in legal offices where people had thousands of documents that they needed to find and work with. But recently, we've seen this product move out into a wide variety of industries, all of which have this need to deal with lots and lots of documents. Well, these are great foundations. It means that people are working to move the industry forward. But we also have some impediments, some things that will slow market growth if we don't solve them. The first continues to be how hard it is to use the PC. I think over the last few years, the PC has actually gotten harder to use. How many people here understand all of the lines in their own config.sys file? Even I hesitate to edit some of those cryptic commands. We've also seen a need to grow large support staffs inside companies to deal with the variety of error messages that you might get from the machine. And even the logistical problems have become overwhelming. The idea of getting the new updates and understanding which products should work with which other products. We've also seen that people now have a very narrow view of how the PC should be used. In many cases, people haven't stepped back and think how processes and procedures should change to make the PC an integral part of that approach. Too many people, even inside the industry itself, see the PC as merely a machine for word processing and spreadsheet type applications. And finally, we still have a hard time as an industry just explaining the benefits of our products. In fact, a lot of large users look and see that the PCs they own today are being used a small percentage of the time, which makes them even more reluctant to roll these out to a broader set of users. Well, these impediments may be having a significant impact. In fact, if we look at the growth over the last 5 years, we can see a very dangerous trend. The growth in sales has gone down for every year for the last 5 years. During 1990, PC sales growth will be about 10%. And many people are saying that next year, the sales growth will be even lower. Some people are saying that we'll have a flat year. That is, we'll only sell as many PCs in 1991 as we sold in 1990. Well, not only is this fairly scary, but there's a contradiction somewhere between the view that a PC will be a valuable tool on every desktop and in every home, and the idea that we're in an industry that's not growing at all. How can we resolve this contradiction? Well, I think the answer is to renew our vision, to take on a vision that is very broad, that encourages all of us to think of the broadest way that PCs can be utilized. Now, my name for this vision is information at your fingertips. When I say information here, I mean it in a very broad sense. I mean all the information that somebody might be interested in, including information they can't even get today. When somebody comes in to do their job, they ought to sit down at their PC and see the information that's important to them. If they want more detail, they ought to just point and click, and that detail should come up on the screen for them. Now, this should include customer data, news data, project schedules, electronic mail, all integrated together in a seamless fashion. Now, in order to illustrate for you my view that this can be done, I put together 4 scenarios. And I had 2 ground rules in putting together these scenarios. The first was that I decided I wouldn't mention a single Microsoft product. Well, that's pretty hard for me. The second constraint was I decided to show you things that are underway today. Everything I'm about to show you, there are multiple companies working on developing, and all of these things will be available certainly within the next 3 years. Let's take a look. The most important place computers are used today is the office. To help set up my first demonstration, let me tell you a little bit about Twin Hills. Twin Hills is an international company based in the Pacific Northwest. They have distributors in the United States and agents all around the world, all of whom depend on Twin Hills for a regular supply of coffee beans. Twin Hills is a relatively small company in a very competitive market. They need to react quickly to changing conditions. This is Diane. She works in the marketing department, and her job is matching the output from various mills with the orders from customers around the world. Let's talk with her. Hi, Diane. Hectic day?
Unbelievable. Our plant up at Twin Points burned down last night, so now I have to locate other sources of raw beans for my Asian outlets. That means I have to go back and review all the production plans of our other Northwest roasting houses to see if we have the beans and the capacity to gear up. I'd hate to lose those new contracts. Meanwhile, I have to notify the rest of the sales force and upper management that we're on the problem before they get too panicked.
Why aren't you using your personal computer?
Hey, I would if I could. It's a great tool for my own personal business, like developing business plans and forecasting and writing memos. But all the important information is locked away on mini computers somewhere on the 8th floor. And I can't get access to it until later on this afternoon when the MIS people get in. We are starting to get our PC network set up for electronic mail, but the reps out in the field don't have access to the network. And the execs upstairs won't even try to use it. So, that leaves 50 people for me to phone in the next 2 hours. On the other hand, news does travel fast these days, and some of my overseas clients have probably already heard the news about the fire and are going to want information as soon as possible on the status of their orders. I hope I can get to them before they call me, or before the competition calls them.
Quite a busy day.
No kidding. I can use all the help I can get.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Well, now let's see how a future system could help solve Diane's problem. What we have here is a next-generation graphical desktop. It's very simple. It's got an inbox, an outbox, a little cassette for making voice notes, and a search tool over here for helping us find information. When you come in the morning, the first thing you probably would do is look in your inbox to see any new mail that might have come in. You point to it, and it opens up, and you can see an indication that there are 2 new messages. First, let's look at the message from H. Smith. We can see this is a voice message. All we have to do to hear it is push on the play button.
Diane, I just wanted to remind you that we need the new sales figures for the board meeting at 11. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.
Integrating audio into the computer is becoming very expensive. Not only are there low-cost audio cards, but I believe that with standards that will soon be set, most new computers will have the audio capability built into them. Also, the ability to connect your PBX together with your PC network, so you see voice and computer mail combined together, is being developed. Let's close this message and look at that important mill news from D.B. Cooper. Well, DB's got some interesting news for us. He's telling us about the new orders from Asia with a 22% increase. In fact, he's even got a little table in there that we'll be able to use later with the actual order figures. He's also taking advantage of the idea of a compound document. And so he's put in here a little icon that'll show us yesterday's newspaper. To see that, all we have to do is point to it and open it up. Well, we see graphical interface at its finest with different fonts and the graphics, and even some buttons here that would let us navigate around these news stories. So now we can read about this incredible mill fire that's going to cause us a lot of problems. Well, let's close this up and get to work on the problem. First, we decide that we're going to need these forecast figures later. So we simply point to those and ask for them to be copied down onto our desktop. As we move into the desktop, they're put into an iconic form that shows that it's a table of figures. We can close this mail message, and next we decide we need to put together a memo to the various plant managers. Well, in doing that, we'd like to show them a graph of our capacity versus our order level. We remember that this has been done before, sometime in the past, when we had another production crisis, and so we bring up our little search tool in order to find that previous graph. Now, this is an interface you'll see a lot in these scenarios. It's very easy to choose exactly what you're interested in. In this case, we'll say that we want to find a chart. So the system goes out to the entire network and finds every chart that's out there. Well, at Twin Hills, over the years, there have been a lot of charts made, so we see over 2,000 items. We can qualify that a little further by taking the date and saying that we're sure this was a chart that we made in the last couple of years. Now, immediately, that reduces the number of qualifying items down to about 100. We can further qualify it by saying that we're sure that this was a chart where somewhere we talked about mill capacity. Now we're down to 6 candidate charts, and so we can just point to one of those and see if it's the one we're interested in. That one's not it, so we point at another one, and we decide that's the one we want to use. So we open it up onto our desktop. This was a pretty fancy chart that we did. In fact, that's why we want to go back and use that in this new presentation. Now we need to start a memo to put this new chart in. So we take the memo form, we copy it, and open it up. Because this is a memo form, it's already set up in our standard memo format. For example, the to field and the subject field. The date is filled in with today's date. We can go ahead and type in the subject and begin the memo by entering some text describing the nature of the problem to the plant managers that are involved. Next, we want to go back and get that chart. So we point to it and copy it over into this memo. Now, it's still not right because it's reflecting the old capacities and the old order situation. So we give a command to say that we want to see the data behind this chart. Now, every time when we're getting one of those pop-up menus, all we're doing is pressing the right button of the mouse, and immediately the machine puts up the verbs that might be relevant to the thing we're pointing to at that time. In this case, we ask to see the data. There's 2 changes we need to make to the data. The first is we'll change the date. That'll cause the query that's inside this spreadsheet to be rerun, and we'll get the latest capacity information. Well, our server knows that each of the 3 plants has more capacity, but now Twin Hills has absolutely no capacity. One other thing we need to do is take that forecast information and now move it up into this data sheet. Well, that's great. It looks like we'll be able to fill this new order even without Twin Hills. Well, this memo is almost done, so let's go ahead and close up the things we used to build it. And let's go ahead and use that little audio cassette and copy that so that we can put a little voice annotation into this memo. We just push the record button and start talking. Well, it looks like it's going to be a challenge to fill these orders. We'll be at 100% of capacity. Good luck. Now all we need to do is fill in the to field with the names of the appropriate plant managers. So once again, let's query, but this time we'll use the address book to find the people who meet the qualifications. In this case, we'll just ask for the group that goes under the name plant managers. So we see little icons for each of the plant managers, and we just select the 3 that are involved in this particular problem. Now we just give the copy command and drag them up into that to field. So this memo is ready to go. The last thing is to give the command for move and indicate we want to move the memo down into the outbox, and we get a visual indication that it's in the process of sending that mail message. Now that's quite different than the experience of using today's applications. What you saw is that Diane was completely focused on her problem and the data involved in her problem. She didn't even realize that in solving this problem, she used 6 different applications. The applications were integrated together in a seamless way. And in fact, the number of commands that she had to understand to get this job done was far less than in today's products. So here we've seen how information at your fingertips can help in the office. Personal computers are moving from the desktop into the field. There have been dramatic advances in portable computers. We're about to see notebook computers without a keyboard, including handwriting recognition. The hardware costs are coming down, and there are exciting possibilities with the right software. Let's look at where this technology could be used. Here's Alex. He visits about 20 stores a day, selling a product line of 15 different food items. Hi, Alex. You do more than drive a truck.
Absolutely, Bill. You know, the decisions I make out in the field can dramatically affect the market share of my product and the success of my entire territory. I'll see you guys tomorrow. The problem is I'm on the road all day, and I just don't have time to check in with the office and get all the latest information. I'm handed a list at the start of each day of customers to call on and products to deliver. But that information is at least 24 hours old by the time I see it. So, it doesn't necessarily reflect precisely what the customers need by the time I arrive. And then my paperwork takes me too much time to get done. Oh, that reminds me. Excuse me a minute. Carol, it's about 12:05 on a Monday afternoon. I'm traveling with Bill Gates. And yes, I still owe you the updates on those Seattle franchises. Hey, it's not a cellular phone, but it works. You know, if there was some way to automate all this stuff, I'd have so much more time to spend with my customers, selling products, helping them with promotional ideas, and I'd spend less time on this paperwork stuff.
What could you do in the field if you had better information?
Well, if I had more information on customer history, on credit ratings, and up-to-date information on the inventories of each store, I could make better decisions out here in the field. All of that takes a lot of phone calls and a lot of time. Well, I've got to run. I'm meeting a bunch of folks at the cafe for lunch. You know they're getting famous for their cherry pie and what they like to call a pretty darn good cup of coffee. Like to join us, Bill?
No, but thanks anyway. Well, how could we help Alex with his problem? It will take a little change in the hardware. Take a computer like this that has no keyboard. In fact, on the screen, there's a touch-sensitive panel. So as you use a stylus and write, it recognizes gestures you're giving as commands, or it recognizes the text you're writing and shows you the characters that you intended. Taking the keyboard off a machine and building something like this is very straightforward. So let's look at what the software would be like that you would run on this machine. Once again, we're seeing the graphical desktop, the same sorts of objects down here at the bottom. In this case, Alex has already called up his customer fill-in box. Typically, he visits a lot of customers in a day, and so the first thing is that he just types in enough characters so the customer can recognize which customer he's going to. Because the computer has a database on these customers, as soon as those characters are entered, it can call up all the information about the customer. The first thing we want to do is go into the store and take an inventory. So the computer will pull up a standard inventory form, including the products that this customer buys. So we can walk through the store simply penning in the amount we find of each item. And as we're writing on the screen, we immediately get feedback because we see the characters that the computer is recognizing. And so if there's a mistake, we simply start over and make a change. Now, when Alex has filled this in, he realizes that there's a new product item called the holiday pack that would be appropriate for this customer. So he asks the computer to display a proposed order form. The computer's already got the suggested quantities, but for this new holiday pack, which the customer's never purchased before, it's up to Alex to fill that in. When the computer recognizes that, he can just put in the quantity. Now, whenever he makes a mistake, he just uses a little cross, a little X, and the computer automatically deletes that text, and he can enter in another number. This idea of using gestures is very, very important. It's so simple when you have a pen and you're pointing directly at the information to do things like make editing marks. In fact, even in the case where you have the keyboard, the pen will complement the keyboard, and it has a critical role to play, not only for portable machines, but also on the desktop, particularly as we're getting large, flat panel type displays. Well, now that this proposed order form is all set up, we can take the computer over to the store manager and show it to him and try and get his approval for each of these items. As we step through the items with the store manager, we can simply put a check mark next to each one of them. The store manager agrees with our first two recommendations, but on that third one, those dip chips, he questions if he really needs 30 new units. Well, it's very easy for us now to ask the computer to show that store manager a graph of the inventory and orders from last Thanksgiving. Last Thanksgiving, there was huge demand for dip chips, and he ran out for a couple weeks of the dip chip item. So upon seeing that information, the store manager agrees that he ought to get 30 new units. We step through the rest of the items, and then the store manager informs us that he'd like to have some new display racks. In fact, he'd like 4 of our fancy new display racks. And so we simply enter those onto the order form. Well, this order is complete now, but the computer indicates we're going to have to go through a special step because we've gone over the standard credit authorization for this store. We tell the computer to go ahead, and now we're using the cellular phone built into Alex's portable computer to place the order in real time. Now, because we have gone above the normal credit limit, the computer is asking for the store owner to take the portable computer and use the stylus to sign his name. It's very straightforward, so Ralph just signs right there, and he's authorized for this transaction. And so that's all the work that Alex needs to do in this store. Once again, we've seen that the computer can be a much more effective tool than we think of it today. It's not just the excitement of handwriting recognition or gestures, but the idea of all that data right there. There are so many people who work in the field, and the value of those people's time is incredible. And making them able to relate more to the customer and the history of that customer has incredible leverage. So in a case like this, we're actually opening up a whole new market that wouldn't have used PCs in the past. So now we've seen how information at your fingertips could work in the field. We also have an opportunity to provide the consumer easier access to lots of different kinds of information. Here are Becky and Tom. They are finishing up the plans for their new house. Let's see what we can do to help them make more informed decisions. Hi, gang. What's next on the project?
Oh, hi, Bill. We're having a problem figuring out what to do in the kitchen. I mean, I think I want a real traditional kitchen, and he wants something high-tech. You know, clean lines, all black and white. We also want to entertain more, but given the layout, I'm not sure we can fit everything in this space. I wish we could see what the options are and what all the appliances will look like in any given layout before we spend money. It'd also be nice to know how all the colors will look together. These little paint chips leave too much to our imagination.
And meanwhile, the crew is costing us money because we can't make up our minds.
Hey, thanks for the break. Yeah, the coffee and donuts are great. But have you guys decided where you want those outlets to go yet?
Would it help to have data about particular appliances?
Yes.
Yes, as a matter of fact. Did you know that we've considered over 20 different models of ovens? I don't have time to read through all this stuff. What I want to know is what's the best model in each price range. Plus, I'd like to get one that's good for baking, especially pies. Just like the ones you get at the diner down the road at Twin Points.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye-bye.
Well, how could the computer help Tom and Becky with their problem? Well, let's imagine that the project is just in the planning stage, and Tom and Becky are going into their architect's office trying to make these decisions. The first thing the architect wants to do is call up the work that he's done on their project previously. So he just uses the query tool and it enters in the name, Tom's name. We can see we have 24 different items. So we narrow this by indicating we want to look at the various plans that have been stored under Tom's name. There's 6 of these, and we select the one on the house itself. Now the first thing we see is actually a 3-dimensional drawing filled in that shows us what this house is going to look like. We can even give a command to move through the house and feel what it'll be like to walk around. Here we are in the kitchen. Now these plans are generated, these pictures, from the actual plans. So we can see the wireframe drawings that go behind them. In fact, we could move anything around, and immediately all the various elements would be brought up to date. Another thing we can do is look at the different colors. For example, we can see the yellow colors that Becky was talking about. Doesn't look too good. We can also go behind these plans and see the cost table that's been put together in the form of a spreadsheet. All of the costs are shown here. We also have in this file information about the proposed schedule. For example, we can see here that buying those appliances is actually the most important critical path in this entire project. And that indicates to us we ought to go back and look at the choices that are being recommended by the architect. So we move back into the cost spreadsheet and look down in the appliance section. Now Tom has indicated he's very interested in the oven. So let's call up the catalog that gives us information about the oven that's being recommended. We can see it's the Radar 2000. Under this entry, we have all the information about this product, including a video clip demonstration. Let's play that for Tom and see what he thinks.
Introducing Radar 2000, the latest and greatest in ovens and stovetops. Technologically advanced, decorator approved. They're designed to meet your upwardly mobile kitchen needs.
And its high-tech design makes it slim, compact, and easier to use. It's got everything you need to make a perfect meal, including dessert. Now this is a darn fine cherry pie.
Well, that's exactly what Tom wanted to know. Well, motion video may seem like it's a very advanced capability, but in fact, the chips to enable this are coming down in price dramatically. The demonstration you just saw used Intel's Digital Video Interactive, or DVI, and they recently announced that for less than $100, people who make add-on boards will be able to include those chips and put them into PC systems. So in a wide variety of applications, including things like point of sale, this will be a very valuable capability. We also think that you will see information-type products, such as catalogs, containing all the information a customer might be interested in, made available in the form of a compact disc. And simply browsing this data and then asking it to be displayed in a form that's particular to your needs, you'll be able to make better decisions and quicker decisions. So now we've seen how information at your fingertips can be used by consumers. An area of concern for all parents is the need to improve their children's education. To date, the personal computer has played a relatively small role in solving this problem. I'm convinced that this role can be greatly broadened. Hi, kids. How do you keep up on what's going on in the world?
I like to read books and magazines. Sometimes I watch public TV.
Well, you know, I like to check out the sports and watch news on TV, but I usually don't have much time for anything else.
Why? Is there a test coming up? Mr. Cooper didn't say anything about a test.
No test. I want to talk to you about computers and what you might do with them. Do any of you use a computer?
Sure. I have one of those home video games. And this. No, those aren't really computers. I use my dad's computer every once in a while to write reports, but that's about all.
I'd like to use computers more, but frankly, they don't do much for me. We have some computers here in the labs, but all the software is pretty boring.
There's nothing worse than boring software. What would make it interesting to you?
Well, I'm interested in planes and space technology. And is there some way that I can experience what it's like to be in space?
Well, I'm researching a report on the French Revolution. It would be interesting to me to see how people dress during that time and hear what kind of music they like to listen to.
Better games. I'm getting a little bored with these. And can't we make learning with computers more fun?
Good ideas, gang. I'll work on it and get back to you in a year or so.
Okay.
Bye. Hey, anyone want some donuts?
Well, how could we make this process of finding information more fun? How could we tap into the natural curiosity that kids have and make it easy for them to get at information? Well, to demonstrate how this might work, we've got on our desktop here an encyclopedia. And this is an encyclopedia that contains a number of multimedia elements. Let's go ahead and open it up and see how it starts. Well, at the beginning, we're given the option of choosing the information we want by indicating the place, the time, the category, or some of the words in the article. Let's choose a place. Now we're seeing the entire world globe. It's easy to get this globe to rotate, and anytime we pick a location, we zoom in on it to see more detail. So we pick the United States, and now we have the choice of all the different regions. Let's pick my home state of Washington. And when we select this, we ask the computer to show us its article on Washington. When that comes up, we can see that it's not just text, but a number of pictures and other elements. Let's ask the computer to show us all the different elements in this article. Now these include not only maps, but also charts, tables, and audio to help explain the subject matter. Here's kind of an interesting thing. It looks like we have something on Twin Points. Let's choose that. Huh. Oh, we even have a nice picture. Let's zoom in and see what that looks like. Nice place. Now, anytime you're down inside this article, you can ask the computer to show you the outline, making it easy to navigate around. Let's go back up to the very front of the article and look at the introduction. Now, we saw in the introduction there were 3 different pictures there that we could zoom in on. One of them called State Facts. Let's pick that. And we see here the state seal, the state flower, and the state tree. There next to the state bird, we have a little musical note, which is an icon to indicate there's audio. All we have to do is point at that, and we can hear the Washington state bird. Great. Now let's go back to the outline and see if we can find any information here about the Washington state economy. In fact, there it is down at the bottom, so we'll point and open that up. The economy is being illustrated in a number of ways, one of which is to show a bar chart of Washington state exports. So let's zoom in on that. There's a lot of important industries in Washington. We can see that software is one of them. Let's go ahead and get some more detail on that. A lot of software companies up there. Let's just see what the encyclopedia has to say about Microsoft. Nice, there's a nice picture there. Let's zoom in and see what it shows us is going on up at Microsoft.
Hi, here at Microsoft, we're working hard to bring you the PC software of the future. We got to put in the hours with the necessary inspiration at our fingertips. Huh? Yeah. How is this pizza or what? Give me a piece of that pepperoni over there. All right.
Doesn't look like hard work to me. Well, that kind of application is really a new kind of application. It's rich in information. Its value goes far beyond the code that's in it, and it's really the content that makes it fascinating and fun to work with. Tools are being developed today that will allow applications like that to be built in the very near future. In fact, all the applications that the kids ask for will be easy to build. For example, a title that shows you what it's like to be in space, or a title that shows you a lot about French history. The idea of using this vision to benefit education will probably take longer than in the other areas, but I think that in the long run, it will have the greatest impact. So this vision of information at your fingertips has exciting possibilities. It's the direction that I think we need to head. Let me be more concrete by pointing out the 5 components that I think will move us there. The first is making the personal computer more personal. People have an individual choice of whether they want to sit down and use that machine. And in fact, it's intimidating today. There are some clear ways to solve these problems. Not only usability studies, but the vast amount of user feedback we have. We can make these machines far, far simpler, and that requires changes at both the hardware and software level. We can also make the applications work together in a transparent fashion. In fact, what you've seen here demonstrates that the architectures that are being worked on right now will make the user concentrate on the data and not be so concerned with the applications and their very, very thick manuals. Another important step is to bring into the PC world fax information and voicemail information. And so it's a complete source of the data that you're interested in. The hardware and software standards for this also are being worked on, and we need a lot of people working together to make that come into fruition. In the area of networks, the industry talks a lot about networks, but it's clear that the products we have right now are still way too limited. It's too hard to do a large network, and the user still gets involved in finding the data inside that network. By solving these problems, we can actually make the network an asset rather than a liability. For example, all the problems of software updating and keeping track of what's going on various machines can be solved with the right networking software. A final point is that we need a vast array of information to be available to users. Well, there's a lot of steps that need to be taken here. First of all, companies have to think what it is about their business, what information they need to get online to make their employees far more productive. In the broader market that includes consumers and students, people like publishers or online information providers, our new companies need to think through building multimedia information titles like the one I've shown. This is a formidable challenge. No single company is going to be able to do this. It's going to require hardware manufacturers, software developers, and the distribution channels all cooperating to make the vision of information at your fingertips a reality. Thank you.
Big thank you to Bill Gates, to Sheldon Adelson. We have an exciting week, a lot of exhibits, and don't miss the Sands Convention Center. Thank you very, very much.